What it do, everyday people, man? It's your boy PJ. Today we back with another lit video. We back in the confessional, and yes, we staying lit, big dog, man. Shout out to my everyday people who rock with me every day. Shout out to my homeboy, Lucky Wheels and Deals. He keeps it lit. Make sure you check out my YouTube channel. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to this video. Make sure you hit the links down below. We got the HiveMindLabs.com. And I was going to show y'all something. I'm going to show y'all in the next video. We got about, I think about 5 videos in this series. So we're going to keep it lit and keep it funky. And I'll give y'all a whole synopsis at the end or whatever. But we're gonna be doing these reactions, okay? We about to get down, big dog. And you know, I'm also going live tonight. So I got to get a lot of work done. A lot of work done with y'all, man. We keeping it lit all weekend long, so I want y'all to stick with me. If it's raining out there, man, enjoy your time and make sure y'all, you know, keep it lit with me. All right, let's get into it.
It's an everyday thing. It's an everyday thing when you let your nuts hang.
This is the beginning of a series called How I Met, Married, and Got Scammed by a Golddigger. And I'm going to follow some of Reese's Tease's style, in the sense I'm going to publish this as fast as possible and tell you as much details. I'm going to be incredibly honest, and it will be emotional because this was a very traumatic experience for me. I was terrified a lot in this relationship. But I also want to start out first with some disclaimers and also a little bit of introduction. I'm Dr. Carrie Kerr-McAvoy. Yes, you heard me correctly. I have a PhD, and I'm a psychologist, or at least I was at the time. I was just had wrapped up my private practice, and I had been practicing and seeing clients for over 20 years. I had been widowed and had started dating pretty seriously when I met this person that I'm going to describe. I'm using fake names, except for my own name, and some the details of the particulars, like where we were.
I don't have to convince myself or teach myself.
All of that can be documented. I have text messages, emails, photos, all sorts of even legal certificates to prove that what I'm telling you is the truth. But I'm going to hide this person's identity for obvious reasons. I'm also want to let you know that you're going to see that there are tons of red flags, like red flag galore. In fact, I think this is more like a bullfight in which I was the bull and thought I was to run after the red flags. But there are some reasons for that too, and I will get into that in one of the early parts. I'll stop and kind of backtrack and tell you a little bit more of my history and why I missed what was right in front of me, how I could have been so gullible, naive and gullible. I also want to say that this is really vulnerable. I'm actually feel pretty terrified telling you this because it does not reflect well on me. I made a grave error, and I fell in love with the wrong person and thought that I'd met an amazing person. I thought I'd met my soulmate. As much as I didn't believe in it, I thought when I met this guy that that's who he was. And so I really fell head over heels with this person. And then I had learned, a lot of accommodating style that I had, grown up in a home where you were to obey. It was a very strict, religious, authoritarian environment. And so I had learned to do what I was told. And I had believed that people were basically good and well-meaning. And that to question the assumption of something was to be insulting, and it was to be nagging and disrespectful. And as a woman, we get a lot of messages not to do that. I didn't want to be the B word, so there were a lot of times where I acquiesced and thought that would be showing respect and humility, and that I would be rewarded for that. But I learned all that did was make me a better and bigger victim. I also want to let you know that periodically I will stop and tell you more details about what was going on behind the scene, what was going on in my own head, what I was thinking about. I'm going to give you a psychological perspective because I think that's the fascinating part. A lot of what I know today, I didn't know at that time. I really took it as face value. But since then, I have done a super deep dive into narcissistic abuse, into narcissism, into psychopathy, and just predatory behavior as a whole. And I even can give you some references. If you're finding yourself struggling in one of these relationships and you don't know what's real and you're really struggling to figure out who it is that you're married to and what you should do next, or who you're in a relationship with and what you should do next, I'd be happy to give you some recommendations. Books like Why Does He Do That by Lundy Bancroft. Also, How Does He Get Into Her Head by Don Hennessy. Women Who Love Psychopaths by Sandra Brown. There's a whole host of excellent material out there that describes predatory behavior. And that's what happened to me. I met a very sophisticated predator.
That's crazy.
We often think that good boundaries can protect us. They can't. When you meet someone skilled enough who understands the manipulation and understands brainwashing techniques, you're meeting someone who really knows how to get into your psyche and is playing with your psychological fears and needs so that you end up being conditioned to accept a whole lot of things that you normally wouldn't have. And that's what happened to me. I was completely blindsided by this person. I didn't anticipate that I was meeting someone that was highly deceptive and extremely exploitative. So those are some disclaimers and premises that I want to set up this series
I hope
with.
she do this for men and women.
I will try my best to answer comments. I also know I'm feeling really exposed, honestly, really exposed. I know a lot of you are going to think that I was super stupid and made a lot of very dumb errors. And looking back, when I got out of that relationship, I felt so much profound shame. So much profound shame. And it cost me not only my dignity, but it also cost me a whole lot of money. But maybe by you hearing my story, you'll know a few things. One is, you're not alone. This can happen to even somebody with a PhD in psychology, that there is a level of extreme dangerousness to predatory behavior, that there are people who are so good at this, who are so instinctual, so practiced, that they're able to get past even those of us that think that we see this. How did people like Bernie Madoff pull off what he did? How did Jeff Epstein go as far as he did for as long as he did, exploiting and taking advantage of people? Unfortunately, it makes us edgy and uncomfortable to know that victimization is something that we all are vulnerable to at any point, at any time, with possibly with anybody.
She used females.
Ann Rule's book about Ted Bundy, and she actually worked alongside of him at the suicide hotline, and then to discover that he was a serial killer and did all these horrific things. And here she thought he was a really good guy, and worked next to him. So sometimes the person beside you who seems really good may be super dangerous. So I'm going to get into my story called How I Met, Married, and Got Scammed by a Gold Digger. And let's buckle up and do this together. So I met Caesar on a dating app called Elite Singles. I had been on a few dating apps at that time.
Red flag.
I think Plenty of Fish was one, Match. And I'd been dating about a year. I probably met about 50 to 60 guys for what I called one and done dates, where you show up and you meet these people and then you find out that, maybe you're looking for different things, or they have a kind of lifestyle that's not compatible to you, or just something that's just a non-negotiable. So I had met quite a few men and just realized how hard it was, how unique it was going to find somebody to match my life as a person who was in her early 50s with kids leaving home and with a pretty quiet lifestyle at that point. And I'm going to get into a little bit more of my background about what had happened and led up to me being single at that point and why I was looking for a new partner. So I was on Elite Single, and it was expensive, and it was about to renew, and I went to cancel it and realized I had missed the subscription date by one date. And I appealed to the company and asked for them to reimburse me for the subscription fee, and they said, no, we're not going to. So then I got a little more serious and started looking at people, and a profile passed my, they showed so many profiles, and one of the profiles that passed my preview was a highly attractive man. He was 5 years younger than me. Showed him on top of the Sears Tower in the backdrop of Chicago, making me think he lived in Chicago, and he just super good looking. He looked like he was a model from GQ, on a cover of GQ. And my first impression was, because I've always considered myself kind of an average looking person, was, nah, he's just too handsome. So I passed on by. But the next day I noticed that he had looked at my profile, and so I looked at his again. And then I thought, you know what do I have to lose? So I said, hey, it looks like we have a few things in common. Would you be interested to see if we had more in common? And he wrote back, said, sure. Now, I want to tell you something else about this profile that was kind of unique. That at the time I thought, I kind of chuckled, but today I would have swiped left. And that was at the bottom of the profile. He said he had some deal breakers. He didn't want to meet anybody who had tattoos, piercings outside of earrings, was a liberal, an atheist, or a pet owner. Now, none of those applied to me, but I didn't really I thought that was a little arrogant of him to be so specific, but a lot of people have preferences, and I just thought, well, at least he's being clear. And since I didn't have any of those issues, I thought, okay, why not? So I responded. So he said, sure. So we started chatting, and we texted probably, and this was, by the way, in July of 2016. When I first met him. And we started texting back and forth for a few weeks, and it seemed really good. And I said, do you think we should meet? Now, granted, I thought he was living outside of Chicago because the name of his town was sort of like one of those areas. And he said, no. He said he was actually in Minnesota, 9 hours away. And I no, this is a deal breaker. I'm not going to deal with long distance. But he said, wait. It's only an hour by air. And I have no problem flying in. And at first I'm thinking, I hope he's not thinking he's going to stay with me, because that's not happening. He said, I'll just run a hotel and come in for the day. I'll come in on Saturday, and then I'll leave on Sunday, and we can spend Saturday together and see if there's any connection. I thought, okay, sure, why not? So we planned this for like a week or two ahead. And then the day comes down, and I go to the airport to pick him up, and he looked like his photos, and he seemed like a decent guy. He was loud. That's one thing that hit me the first off, was that he was like larger than life, and he really filled the car space. We headed out to Lake Michigan. I was living in Michigan at the time. Lake Michigan for the day, where I had planned to have a lunch and just to sort of sit and look at the beautiful water and get to know each other in this August. By this is August. With each other. So we get there, and the first thing I notice is that he's a little chivalrous to extreme, and at first I'm thinking, well, that's really nice. Like, he took all the beach stuff and it literally loaded him down, and I'm trying to help, and he's swinging it away and saying, no, he's got this. He's come to take care of me. And I thought, so sweet. So we get there, and we're having a good time. We're enjoying a wine cooler and looking at the water. And then I realized that I'd forgot the meat. All the cold supplies are still in the refrigerator back home, that we just have all the makings for sandwiches, but nothing to really make the sandwich. And he's super cool. He said, no worries. I got it. We'll be fine. And so we make the best of what we have with some fruits and some chips. But then we kind of wrap it up early, and he goes, let me take you out. Maybe we can see a movie. And I'm thinking, yeah, we've had a really good time. What hit me about that was, he seemed to check all the boxes, and I had a list of requirements that I was looking for in a person. I wanted them to have a career. He had a professional job. His kids were roughly the same age as mine. They were also leaving the house. It shocked me how much we just lined up. He went to similar churches I did. He seemed to have similar faith as I did. Just seemed like a really nice professional man. I knew he was Hispanic and that he had actually immigrated here, but he'd been here for a very long time, for all of his adult life, basically. And there was a lot about him that felt safe, really nice and safe.
Red flag.
And all the dating I had done, I had not met anybody that had aligned so much with what I was looking for. But then there ended up being a caveat. He hadn't really shared a whole lot about his history or about his relationship history particularly. And I knew he was in his late 40s, and he shared he'd been married 4 times. And that was shocking. I wanted to drop my mouth. And then he went through each one real quickly, what kind of went wrong. He said he was really young the first time, and he didn't really love her. He just wanted out of the house. And the second one he'd been with for a long time, but it was a rough marriage, and they had a child together. Actually had a child with the first wife too, but he had a child with the second one. And then the third marriage was really short, and he said that, she kind of prioritized other relationships outside of him. The fourth marriage, he said that he discovered she had a legal history and that she was kind of dangerous and didn't feel safe with her, and that he learned his lesson and was really trying to approach relationships differently. And then he gave me a gift. He gave me a book called Love and Respect, written by a Christian author. And he said, I really started realizing that I need to model relationships after this. And that one of the things that I had done previously is I rushed too fast and I didn't really interview the person to make sure that we're a match. So I'm looking for someone who's better match. And I'm thinking, all of this sounds great. It sounds like this is a thoughtful person who really has considered what it is that he's looking for. And it made me feel better. And I thought it was really cool that he brought a book and he said it was his, that he had underlined the key pieces and parts that meant a lot to him and touched him. And I really felt like that was an incredible gift, But I want you to put a pin on that one. And I'm going to come back later in the story about that book. So as we're wrapping up, I decided to ask him one of my deal breakers. And one of mine is that I have a thing about pornography. I have a history of SA, and I'd been exposed to it in a really weird way. And it really bothers me. And it wasn't part of my first marriage. And I just didn't want that to be a big part of our second marriage. So I asked him, and he acted weird. He said no. And this was like an off, not allowed subject, like off limits. And I thought that was really strange, but I thought, okay, maybe, I don't know. I just thought it was strange. But we ended up with the rest of the date. It went great. That night I was really wiped and went home. And after I dropped him off at the hotel, but I was kind of conflicted about the history of his marriages. I didn't know quite what that meant. And if that was a good, I was feeling like a little overwhelmed, that I would be the fifth potentially serious relationship if this went somewhere. So the next morning I go back to the hotel to take him to the airport, and he invites me up into his room, which I didn't want to go. I felt really uncomfortable. We were supposed to go to church, but I didn't feel good enough to go to church. So he said, as he's packing up, just come up and wait with me. I'm almost unpacking. And then when we're there, he said a couple odd things. One was he said that he was surprised he wanted me so much. And that hurt, but I kind of decided to overlook it. And he started kissing me and, pushing up against me. And I felt suffocated, like I couldn't breathe. But I had gotten into a place with myself where I really wanted a relationship, and I was mad at God. I had a faith, but I was really angry with God. And even though I was a person who didn't believe in, intimacy before marriage, I had decided that if the opportunity arose, that I might take advantage of that. I just was really conflicted. But I felt kind of suffocated by him. And he pushed me to be intimate with him really fast. And that was weird, because when it was over, he just got up and kind of packed and got ready to leave the room. But I felt sort of odd, funny, and uncomfortable about what happened. And the other really weird thing he said that I didn't know what it meant was that when we did this on the date on the beach, he said he'd been looking for widows. And I didn't really know what that meant. I thought maybe he saw that I was a widow and he'd started researching it. So again, I just didn't know what it meant of it. And I want to back up and give you some details about my life prior to meeting Caesar. I had met my lifelong partner, Brad, back when I was 19 years old. And when I met him, I fell madly in love with him, and we became inseparable. And we were married 2 years later, and we're together for 31 years. We had 3 kids, 3 sons, and we were moving into our early 50s and planning to retire, thinking that at 60 we would retire. And we were already kind of envisioning the life that we wanted to have. In fact, we had also bought a property. We were going to build a new kind of retirement home and had been working with an architect. And I was excited. I was excited about where things were heading. We had been single for 7 years before we had our first child while I was going through grad school, and he helped me with that. And it was probably one of the best parts of our marriage, that single period. So I was looking forward to being retired with him, with our last child gone, and really kind of rekindling the love that we had, the connection we had, because we'd been so busy raising kids and getting on with our career. And I was really looking forward to us shifting. Well, in December of 2014, he started vomiting. And it was weird. I saw one of the incidences. He actually turned gray. I didn't know the body could turn gray. And it got super cold, and then he fell asleep. He got super sleepy. And then it makes me really emotional thinking about this. He would fall asleep, and then when he'd wake up, the nausea had disappeared and he'd feel better. But I knew this was wrong. Something was essentially really wrong. So I urged him to see the doctor. He kept saying, no, it's my diet. I've been eating gluten. I shouldn't. Or I've been, doing something, cheating in things and I shouldn't be eating, maybe having milk or whatever. And I kept thinking, no, this is not normal. This is not normal. So after a really bad incident where we went to a Christmas party that year, he got super sick. We ended up in the ER and they didn't find anything. And I was feeling panicked because I could tell something was really, really wrong. So a friend of ours got us into an ENT the day after Christmas, which I just thought was miraculous. And because we couldn't get in, we couldn't get an appointment with a GI guy. We couldn't seem to get an appointment with a GI guy in that little of notice over Christmas. But a friend of ours pulled some strings with a friend of hers and got us into this amazing man. And so we see him, we describe what's going on, and he orders that day an endoscopy to look at what's going on in Brad's stomach and stuff. And I'll never forget that afternoon. They admitted him and they admitted us to the cancer ward, which I knew was a bad sign. And they said it's one of 5 things. And they mentioned cancer twice. So the next morning, the doctor we'd met, the GI doctor, comes into the room and says, I'm so sorry, Brad. You have terminal cancer. He didn't use the word terminal, but he said you have duodenal cancer. It's in this section. It's going to take this major surgery. You can no longer eat. It's closed off the between the stomach and the intestines. It's now been basically nearly closed, and that's why you're getting so sick. We're going to immediately schedule surgery for you, but I want to let you know I'm sorry. And I remember after the doctor left the room, I went up to Brad and I looked at him and he looked at me and he said, I'm not going to make it. And I just remember thinking, I don't know what to say to somebody who's just received the worst news of his life. And sure enough, we found out it was stage 3B and the surgery failed. And by the time he recovered from surgery, he could start chemotherapy. It was already metastasized throughout his entire body. And it was in his liver, might have even been in his brain. He ended up having early Alzheimer's. So my life imploded. I stopped working. That's when I retired. And I started taking care of him full time. And I watched this big, strong man in 5.5 months go from incredibly out golfing, busy, going to the gym every day to death in 5.5 months. And then, of course, we have kids who are from age of 22 to 17. And how do you prepare your sons to say goodbye for their father for forever? I just felt overwhelmed. And on top of it, Brad developed early dementia. And he's losing his cognitive abilities, losing the ability to add. And eventually, near the end of his life, he lost the ability to speak and lost the ability to write. It was devastating. We had to stop the building project. And it just, everything was imploding on me. My future, my marriage was going to be gone. My last child was leaving the home, and I had just kind of closed my practice and I didn't feel in the shape to see people. And then this person I had spent my entire life with, that I dearly loved, was leaving me. I felt broken, really broken. So when he passed away, I was shattered. I felt like life had put me in adrift. I didn't fit socially anymore. I felt like the fifth wheel everywhere I went. I no longer could do things as a couple. People felt sorry for me. And that was the other thing that was super hard, was everybody saw me as part of Brad and Carrie. And now I'm just Carrie. And they don't really know me that way. And, it felt so weird, so awkward, so public. So I really wanted the life that I had back. I wanted to get into a relationship with somebody and really recover this thing that I had, this amazing thing that I had. And I would say Brad and my marriage was good. I wouldn't say it was perfect. There was times that I struggled liking him. But we worked things through. And the thing about Brad is that he really had my back. And he was super, super loyal. He was the kind of guy that you could take his word to the bank. If he said to you, I will help you move, and even if he got the flu and was vomiting his guts up, he would still show up and help you move. He was just somebody who, his word was his bond. I remember when he got the cell phone first in our house because work gave him one. And I remember just never even feeling edgy about the cell phone, just feeling like I knew where he was and I knew what he was up to and I knew who he was with. He was just one of those people that what you saw was what you got. So I super, super trusted him. And he made me feel really safe. He and I shared everything. We dreamed our life together. He put me through school and then saw me build my practice. He encouraged me to start writing. And, he just was one of these people that sort of championed me. And so whenever we made plans, we made them openly and together. We had a joint financial account and, we even structured how we spent money. So there wasn't any surprises. It was just a really trusting relationship. And rightly or wrongly, I just thought that's what relationships look like. I thought that that's what people wanted when they went into a relationship. They wanted that kind of vulnerability and intimacy. So when I got out and when I ended up being widowed, I just felt really tossed out, really bereft, but hopeful that maybe I could find that kind of love again. And I believe that kind of person existed, that I could find somebody who really wanted to share my life and make plans and be financially, share our life financially together. So here's the other piece though. Brad and I had a large life insurance that actually I was the one that took it out on him and took one out on me because I knew that, it would be expensive if I got caught without a partner raising kids and with a mortgage that I had. And the other thing is his work left him a really good retirement or, retirement or death benefits. So he left me financially independent. And that was strange. It felt really weird to go from worried about how many shoes I had and if I could afford clothes and, how to manage Christmas budget to suddenly not have to think about those things. Now, it wasn't like I could go do whatever I wanted. I couldn't spend money like that, but it left me at least comfortable. But the feeling of that shift was weird, was really strange to go from very thoughtful to now being a little more not so careful. And so it was set awkwardly with me. I didn't really know. I just felt really strange. So there was another error is I just didn't understand how to handle this change in my financial status. But that's a little bit of background. I think the one other thing to understand about me is I'm autistic. So I'm not always good seeing duplicity and deception. Sometimes I tend to be a little too literal and I don't like deception. I'm not good at it. I can't do it. It actually physically hurts me. I kind of assumed that was true for everybody. And I didn't know that it wasn't until I found out that it wasn't. So there's some background to me and my life leading up to meeting Caesar. As you know, I've already had my first date. And
everybody autistic now.
Everything about Caesar seemed amazing. He would send me good morning texts, wake me up, and then he'd be the last person to text me with sweet dreams. He would send me Bible verses. He would share songs that he thought of that he thought I might like. Often these accompanied gorgeous images that he would send in these texts. He'd sometimes send me a little video of himself wishing me good morning or wishing me good night or telling me he couldn't wait to see me at the next date. And I was super excited. I couldn't wait to see him. Now, I came from a very sheltered background. I grew up in a conservative Christian home. And I was the oldest of three girls. I was one of these people who just did everything right. I was super careful and very cautious. I had found really early that it made life better when I showed up in a way that was pleasing and helpful. It made my parents' tempers go down. It made my teachers like me. So I tended to be referred to as the teacher pet, or goody two shoes or something like that, because I was just one of these kids that just didn't cross the line. I always wanted to know what the rules were, and I stayed on the right side of it. But losing Brad devastated me. I felt like God betrayed me, that I had been basically a good mom and wife, and I had worked hard all these years, and I suffered as a little kid because of the abuse that I went through, the essay that I went through, that I really thought that I had had enough suffering in my life. And I felt kind of owed, honestly. I felt kind of like, I know now that that's not how I feel today, but I kind of felt God owed me. And as a result, I was sort of
I was angry. I was very, very angry at God. I felt like he took something terribly good, he derailed my life and exploded it. Now, cancer did that. I don't think God did that, but I was pointing a lot of blame at God. And so one of the things I decided, because Brad and my relationship was close on a lot of levels, but one of the nice levels was our physical intimacy. That we had a rich private life that way, and I felt really gypped because when he got ill, it just suddenly was gone. I mean, it was like literally overnight, from a normal life to suddenly everything was different. So I went into this relationship with a perspective of, I'm going to try a new way. I had not really ever dated before. I didn't know anything about online dating. I didn't really, outside of Brad, I'd never had a serious relationship with another man. So I felt like I just wanted to expand that, and that maybe, in a way, I guess I kind of blamed my conservative upbringing for some of the ways in which my life turned out the way that it did. So as I was getting ready for that second date with Caesar, I'd known that it already had crossed over based on his pushing, and so I'm thinking, okay, whatever. But here's the other thing that was going on behind the scene that I hadn't really processed a lot or did a lot with, but it was a really big deal, is that, and you probably know because you see it, is I wear wigs. When I was pregnant with my third child, all the pregnancies for me, I had 3 pregnancies, never went well. I had some underlying like cardiac or heart issue that caused me to have extremely high blood pressure. And with the last baby, not only that, but my heart raced. At night, my sleeping heart rate was 120, and they had me on medicine, and they induced me and had me go early. And one of the consequences of that just difficult pregnancy was I had a massive hair loss. So here I am in my 30s having this massive shed, permanent hair loss, and I'm devastated. So for many years, I tried to figure out what I'm going to do to cover up this loss, and feeling just so ashamed, so broken. In fact, Brad never saw me naturally. I never showed him what I look like without some kind of a hairpiece or some kind of a cover-up or something. So here I'm going to have this second date with somebody, and we're going to plan to share a hotel room, and how do you hide that? So I decide to text him as we're getting closer to the date that I wear a wig and that I would probably be wearing a nightcap. And he texts back and says, I'm tired. I don't think I can do a relationship where there's not vulnerability and honesty and trust. So if you can't show me what you really look like, if you have to wear a cap at night, I just don't want to go forward. And mind you, this is like the day before we see each other. I
don't see nothing wrong with it.
And devastated. I'm not ready to let someone into that kind of private part of my life. And yet, on another level, I was so touched that he was vulnerable and shared so much of that it felt really like mature and special. So I decide that I'm going to do the brave thing and do that. So I arrive for the second day. I'm now in his hometown in the Minnesota area. And he meets me as I get off the airplane with hothouse roses, not the grocery kind, but really high-end roses, this gorgeous. He looks so excited. And when he brings me back to the hotel, he starts to dance with me in the hotel room, singing in my ear. And I then take my wig off and show him. And it kind of moves into something that's really intimate, yet strange. It was beautiful, but weird. I mean, there's a part of the intimacy with him that always felt performative and not really close. But I'm overlooking that because I'm just so touched with all the romantic pieces of this that it just feels really wonderful. We have a great weekend. He takes me to do some really unusual things. We go to an aquarium, we see some sights, he takes me to his favorite restaurant, and it's just a really cool experience being introduced to his hometown. And I'm looking forward to our final day because I sent him the itinerary of my flights before I arrived so he'd know that I was going to leave like early afternoon. So I thought we still had the morning and the final day on Sunday. That we could go get a brunch, kind of make it a lazy morning, wrap up our slow goodbye. And I hear him getting dressed and kind of in a weird way in the bathroom. And he comes out and he's wearing football costume and football color beads and all of this. He's dressed up like a fan. And he says, I'm meeting my son at a football game, at a sporting event. You don't mind if I drop you off the airport early? And I'm thinking, what? So I'm going to go to the airport now and be there for like 5, 6, 7 hours so that you can go to a sporting event that you never bothered to tell me, and I shared this itinerary with you and you didn't say it had a conflict, and we didn't talk about what we're going to do Sunday. But I say to myself in my head, see, that's what you get for not being clear with him. So in the future, communicate clear, and then there won't be this mix-ups. So I pull it together, although I'm pretty crushed, pack up, and head out. We head out to the airport, and he get ready to drop me off. And then he hands me the roses that he had bought. Only he had clipped them, and he put them in a baggie, and he said, "Here you go here's the roses, so you can take them home and dry them and have a memory of our first date." And my heart melted. So it felt like that horrible piece of him dropping me off early was suddenly washed away with this incredibly romantic gesture. So the date wraps up, and I'm feeling like over the moon. Even though I'd only maybe known this man for a month, I'm feeling incredibly in love with him. And I even at that date tell him that I love him. And he ends the date leaning forward near my ear, and he says he loves me too. So I just feel like I have met this incredible person, this romantic, handsome, professional person who is similar faith, wants the same kind of things, and it's just really an amazing experience. And so I leave that and go home, and it was shortly after that I find out that he's getting ready to go on a family trip to see go to a family wedding, actually, maybe with his mother, and he's going to be out of town for a few days, and that we're going to have an absence. So I'm dreading that, thinking, am I really, I feel so connected, and I'm really falling for this person, and I want to see him every day. In fact, to me, life feels like it becomes colorful when I'm around him, and that when I'm away from him, it feels dull and flat and gray, that I feel like I come alive when I'm with him, and that I go into hibernation while I wait to see him again. And I'm realizing I really hate this long distance thing, that it's going to be a really big problem. So I gear up for him being gone, and as the night before he leaves out of town and he's getting ready for this family wedding, he says to me, "Will you go steady?" And I'm just so touched again by this kind of old-fashioned way that he approaches this, and I'm thinking, yeah, of course I want that. He goes on that trip, and he pretty much goes incommunicado. I don't hear from him, which is really strange. It's like nothing. It went dead. Except that near the end of that trip, he sends me a couple photos of himself at the wedding, dressed up in a tux, and he's, one of them, he's holding up a drink, and he has a party hat on, and his eyes are wild. It looks really like frantic or bizarre, kind of, I don't even know how to explain it, just sort of manic almost. But I'm relieved when he gets home because communication starts back up. But it's weird. Texting with him was never good. It was always strange. It was always on his terms. I would literally keep my phone next to me in case a text came in, because if I texted him, it might take hours or maybe a day before he'd respond. And then there'd be a flurry of texts would come in, and I almost felt like I was trying to catch him and grab him and hold him on to him. And then next thing I know, he'd be back gone again. And it felt really, which made wanting to see him even more intense. So I was super looking forward to our next date, which we planned to have in Chicago. And I lived outside of Chicago. In fact, I went to college near there, and so I not knew the town, but it wasn't new to me. But I was super excited to go with him and make a really great experience out of it. In fact, it was my last big trip. Yeah, it was my last big trip with Brad before he got sick. It was that thing we did was in Chicago. And so there was a part of me that even wanted to make new memories that are happier, because that trip was kind of tense, and we had an argument. It wasn't really great, and it was one of our, like I said, last trips while he was healthy, while Brad was healthy. So I really wanted to make new memories with Caesar and do something different. It was a fantastic event. We went to all the popular Chicago sites and took photos and ate at great restaurants and just had a wonderful time. And it felt like I felt like Cinderella. I felt like I had woke up into this incredible experience, the best that I'd ever had, everything that I ever wanted in a relationship. I felt like I was finding with him, but yet there was something about him and the way that we were relating that just didn't add up. Like his lack of availability, and how we didn't talk on the phone much. He just wasn't really available, and I kind of chalked it down to work or chalked it down to him having a busy life. Or maybe I knew he had an adult son that he supposedly lived with, and I thought, well, maybe they're spending time together. Maybe they have a rich life together. And so I kept thinking that it was sort of me. I needed to grow up and be bigger about it and see this as just like what relationships look like. I didn't know how else to interpret it, and I didn't know that this might be a big red flag that I was missing. But I was feeling edgy enough that I decided to contact a private eye, somebody do a background check on him. Not just one of those online things. I wanted to actually have someone like look into his records, look into his legal records, financial records, to the degree you could that was online. But I had a specific question, because remember, he'd been married 4 times. I wanted to know if he was divorced. I wanted to know if he was really not living with someone and he was actually divorced. I don't know why I had that concern, because I'd gone online and I could find proof that he had been married several times. I mean, I could find those records, but I couldn't find the records to prove that he had been divorced. And I had this uneasiness about it. So I called up this guy I'd used before when I was being scammed by somebody, and I wanted somebody to look into whether or not this person was real, and that person wasn't real. So I called this guy back up and said, would you do a check on Caesar and see what you could find?
Scammed into a relationship.
What came back was hopeful, but also surprising. It came back, the guy said, the PI said, the best that I can tell, he's living alone. His utilities suggest it's only one person living there. I really couldn't find his divorce decree, so I can't tell you for sure he's divorced, but I can tell you he's living alone. And then it also came back that he had a lot of job changes, like many, and pretty short, pretty quick, and that he'd filed for bankruptcy a few times. It also showed that he'd had a DUI as well, and that he'd a couple driving incidents that were problematic. So here I'm sitting on this information. We're getting ready for another day after Chicago. He's going to come to my house, and I'm not for sure what to do with it. I feel like I betrayed him. I feel like if I had those concerns, I should have gone to him and asked him about it. But I didn't feel a freedom, and I don't know what made me feel so silent, so scared to speak up and ask more about his history. Except that, I remember during that first date when I asked him about his use of pornography, he just said no. I mean, it was just a flat no. So I realized there was off limits with him, and now I'm dancing around some stuff, and this was my way of solving it, was to pull this background check. So he comes. Again, we have a good weekend. He has issues with his phone, and he asks if I can help it because I'm kind of techie. And I do end up figuring it out. I have to reload his phone and sort of do a reset, use my computer to back it up, reset it, and then it corrected the phone. And so I gave it to him, and I remember him looking at me really strange and saying, so what did you have to do to fix this? And I explained the process, and he just looked at me. And then he said, oh, okay, thank you. And I just thought that was weird. Like, you should be grateful I fixed your phone, that you don't have to go to a service center to get it fixed. But in the middle of all this, I feel this weight. I have to tell him that I did this background check because I really don't want secrets between us. This feels like a big thing. It feels like an act of distrust. And so I wait till, shortly before he's ready to leave and say, hey, I want you to let you know I did a background check. He goes absolutely still. Just still. And then he says, with low voice, it almost sounds menacing, so what did you learn? And I said, well, it showed that you lived in a lot of different places. He goes, no, I didn't. My identity had gotten stolen. I have proof of that. I have police records, and somebody else is using my social security card. I've never been in these other states. Oh, okay. Well, it showed that you had some bankruptcy. He goes, yeah, I told you about that. I've ran into some mental health issues, and during those periods of time, I lost employment, and I had some just bankruptcy. Okay, yeah, he had mentioned it in passing, but I didn't really check into that. And I said, well, it also showed that you changed jobs. He goes, yeah, I changed jobs. Okay. And I said, that you've had a DUI. And he said, yep, I drove drunk and got in trouble, and that was really expensive, but I worked it through, and I have my license back. And he's absolutely still. Like, I can almost feel like fury is rolling off of him. And I now feel like I'm a 5-year-old, reporting my parents. Tears are dripping into my lap. And he gets up and he walks behind me, and I think it's over. I mean, he just feels like I did this ultimate betrayal. And he calls me over next to him on the couch, and he says, listen, next time you have concerns, talk to me. Don't do it like this. And I just start to cry, and he pulls me into his chest, and I can feel his heart beating and the warmth of his body. And he said, listen, it's going to be okay. Just next time, talk to me. And I just melt. I feel like he gets me. This is incredible.
She kind of did the right thing.
We have this big thing, and it was a hard thing, and I did something that was hurtful.
But now, from now on, ask questions.
He's understands. He's made a way through this, and I just feel really, really great. And yet, there's a part of me that still doesn't, because it feels like still I have questions, but I don't even know what the questions are that I should have. I just feel like something's, I don't know, like not quite adding up, and it was leaving me uncomfortable. But here was the other thing that was leaving me super uncomfortable, was I hadn't shared with him the fact that I had come into money and why I was not working, and why I had all this downtime. And I could tell he found my lifestyle really odd. And he was kind of starting to make comments about, asking what I did with my day and what kind of things did I accomplish. And I didn't have anything to say. I mean, how do you share, like, what TV shows you watched, or you hung out with a friend? I mean, how do you explain the fact that I don't have a work history to share with him? It's like, when are you counseling? Are you going to go back to practice? And like, no, and I'm writing. And I mean, I try to like make up a life that sounds like it's busy, but I can tell there's this weirdness. And yet I'm starting to feel this incredible trust with this person. And I had this, I'm feeling defensive. I had this, incredible, rich life with Brad that I had shared completely. So I'm feeling I want that again with Caesar. So on a phone call, I explained to him that I had come into money. And what's worse is that I told him the amount. And the phone goes absolutely silent. And when it did, I just felt this like wash of shame. Like I did something really bad, so bad that I know that it's not recoverable. The last part I shared with you, that Caesar was starting to realize that I wasn't working full time, and I didn't know how to explain my living situation. And I then told him that I had money, and not only that, I told him the exact amount. And when I did that on that phone call, I felt such intense shame that I knew I had blown it. That I had ruined this relationship, that I had done the worst thing possible, and there would be no takebacks. And I also knew that I now would never know why he was in this relationship with me, because I had added something that was like this very enticing carrot. And that the best thing, the most safest thing that I could do was to break up with him. And I was so distraught that I literally forgot that I told him. I repressed it. This is not the first time I've had repressed memories. As I mentioned, I'm a survivor of SA, and I was really young at the time. It was a horrific experience, and I don't have all my memories back from that period. And I just survived this really kind of scary home, in which I just learned to shut my emotions down. And sometimes I forgot things, forgot memories, forgot events that happened to me. And I literally forgot that I told him. It was as if it never happened. I didn't remember that I told him until 2 years after the relationship was over, and I was wrapping up writing Love You More, my book about this relationship, when it came back to me. And I was like, oh. So that happens. But the distance is wearing on me. Life is horrible away from him. I want to see him more. So I do this really radical thing and decide to go to his area for a 3-week extended period, where that way I could see him every day. We could date more normally. And I thought that would be great. And he thought it was a great plan too. He said, normally I don't do this, but you being really far away and I'm falling for you too, sure, let's do this. So we planned that we would meet up at the end of Thanksgiving holiday with family, and then we'd spend the 3 weeks leading up towards Christmas, kind of like mid-December, together. Now, in this process, he gets a new job, and a job that moves him to another state. And this new job puts him up in like one of these sweet hotels, with a little kitchenette, like a burner or something. So he says, hey, we can't meet in my hometown anymore. We're going to have to meet in this new area. It's in Iowa. It's where I have the new job. Are you okay? And I already had made a reservation. I was going to lose that reservation, 3-week reservation. And he made no offer to pay for it either. But I just swallowed, and he goes, how about you just stay with me in this hotel, and that way it saves you the money. I know you already spent that money. That would be a way to sort of fix this. Okay, all right. Not real happy about that. I was really looking forward to the Airbnb okay, we can shift. I really want to see him. So I arrive, and it's this dumpy place. It's dark. It has like a lead pipe for a closet where you hang clothes on. It was spring mattress. I mean, literally like the base is just a spring thing. It was awful. And on top of it, he's working 10 plus hours a day. And I'm in this little, and it's winter in Iowa, cold, you know? So I'm kind of stuck in this hotel waiting for him. And I go ahead and I try to make the best. I make dinner and I contact friends and I bring some, projects that I wanted to work on while I was there. So I work on the projects and watch TV, but it's really boring. And at night, he's tired. He's gray. He's got gray, dark circles under his eyes. And in the middle of all this, there's a fire at this he's working at like this factory, and there's a fire, and he's a supervisor. So he ends up being the one that gets called a lot to help make sure this fire gets put out. And he comes home smelling of smoke, and he's coughing, and it's just a mess. It's just not anything like what I thought. And he feels emotionally distant to me. So I somehow make it through the first week we're going to have 2 weekends together and make it through the first week and we're looking for the weekend. And he comes home after work one night, like Thursday night, and says, "Hey, I heard from my son. He wants to see me back in my hometown 3 hours away. I'm going to go see him for the weekend and then I'll be back on Sunday night." And I'm thinking, what? I'm here in this hotel. I only have 2 weekends and you're going to go leave me after I spent the whole week alone, mostly because you're working so hard, and you're going to leave me to go see your son for the weekend? I was stunned. I was so angry. He was really angry. I was really angry. It got confrontational. "You're not going to tell me I can't see my son, are you?" So he finally, he kind of moves to he goes to the bathroom, cools off, takes a shower, comes back out and says, "Hey, I have a plan. How about you ride up with me? My son's not ready to meet you. I'm not going to introduce a girlfriend to him." But I didn't get to see him for Thanksgiving because he was out of town, or somebody was out of town, and I really need to see him before the holidays, and I'm now living here. But how about you ride up with me, stay in a hotel there, and then we'll come back together and we'll at least have that time in the car. And I'm thinking, okay, it's not the perfect plan, but at least you're trying. Because I was really thinking, in fact, I had started to pack and I'd put my suitcase under the bed because I thought, I'm not sticking around for this. So we do it, and it's weird. He leaves and he's gone till late. He comes home, he doesn't even change his clothes and doesn't brush his teeth, and he's sick, he has a cold. So it's nothing romantic, it's not a good weekend. And I end up feeling like I should have gone home. It was so, such a bust. So I limped through another week of him working a lot. And then the last weekend, I find out that one of the Christmas gifts I'd ordered for myself wasn't going to arrive, and I was really upset. And he said, "Are you going to let this ruin your weekend, or are we going to pull it together and do something?" Well, we exchanged gifts, which I had a gift, but he took me out shopping and bought me a few things from a tech store. It was just lackluster. And as the whole trip wrapped up, I'm thinking, I'm not for sure this is going to go anywhere. I'm not for sure we're going to make it. But I did learn something by doing this. I realized that living in Michigan, where I had lived as part of Brad and Carrie for all those years, wasn't working, that I was really depressed. So I called my son up, who was living with me, my middle son of the 3 sons I have, and I said, "Hey, you know what? I'm thinking about moving. And, Iowa is as good a place as anywhere else. I don't know where else to go. At least it's sunny here. It's cloudy in Michigan, and what do you think? Would you be interested in moving?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm really depressed here too. It's too many reminders of Dad. Let's do this." So I used the last few days in Iowa to look for a home to move to with my son. And I'm not for sure if Caesar and I are going to make it, but I'm not for sure I care. But at least I have this new plan to head with my new life to kind of go in a new direction. And maybe I'm thinking if I'm in this area, Caesar and I can at least try to date and see if it gets a little more on better footing and gets a little more normal. But I'm feeling excited about moving to somewhere new. So I find a house. I'm super excited. I go home. I have a decent Christmas. It's, still hard because we can feel Brad not being there. As my sons don't even really know how to talk about missing their dad. And it just, like, Brad hangs over. This is the second Christmas without him, but Brad's lack of presence just hangs over us so heavy. But I'm feeling hopeful because I'm going to have this new start in a new state, and at least that maybe things will become a little bit more normal, and maybe there'll be new opportunities for my son who's been having a hard time finding a job. So I'm feeling some optimism in the middle of all this hard stuff. So we wake up in early January, and in the middle of a snowstorm, we moved to Iowa and moved into a new house. And actually it was one of my favorite places to live, and it was a gorgeous house, and my son found a great tech job. And what surprised me the most was Caesar was excited to see me. And he met me and met my son, took us out to dinner, and he started to come over at night to watch TV with me before he went home, and we started to have this nice dating relationship that felt really good. And everything I had felt, hopeful about, all the romance and all that kind of came back. Like on Sunday he would take me out and we get all the stuff for carnitas, and then we'd have carnitas with my son, and we'd watch movies with my son, and it just felt like really fantastic. So then Valentine's Day is coming up, and he says, and I have some airline tickets to use up, and he says, let's do something special. And I'm thinking, you know what? I'd like to take you to where I got my degree, take you out to Napa Valley in California and be really romantic, and he can tour some wineries with me. And I can tell he's up to something special, and I start to wonder if maybe he might ask me to marry him.
All right, everyday people, man. Y'all heard, man. I was thinking that she was getting... here's the thing. I don't like that. Like she's giving every man a narcissistic trait. And I don't like that. Like, women can't be narcissists. And it's telling women how to find this. And so every woman is going to go searching for this narcissist in their significant other. And I don't think that's good, because maybe it's just your husband or that man you was dating. Maybe, just maybe, somebody's going to find a reason to call a man a narcissist. So pretty much, if I like things a certain way and I just gotta have it done this way, am I a narcissist? Because the traits of a narcissist is technically good traits if you're a business owner, or if you want to run something successful like a relationship. You want to set boundaries. You like things a certain way. You think highly of yourself. You think highly of your partner. It's certain things. So I don't know. But here's another thing. She literally sees all these red flags, so-called red flags. And she's a psychiatrist, a doctor at this point. And instead of saying, I want to back off this guy, what does she do? She moves closer to him. So I was catching a few things in the story that I found intriguing, and I was wondering, how could she just blow past that? And she's seen his true self, and the more she spend time with him, she will eventually, you're gonna see the truth in somebody. And I don't think it was wrong for her to do the background check. For whatever reason, I don't. But see, me personally, I like to tell women up front before they have to read it or go get it from somebody else. I tell them up front, because I don't want you to feel like I'm intentionally hiding something from you. Cause that ain't it. I'm not hiding nothing from you, and I won't. I don't need to. But I don't know. It could be either way. I think women hide stuff too, and I think people just hide stuff in general. And I think the wedding, the married for a time, that thing, that should be a red flag. Unless he has a bunch of widows. And then that could be a red flag. But yeah, and her on dating sites, I don't know what her and Dolly Day, them, the older crowd on dating sites, I just don't get it. I don't think I'm ready for a dating site, or ever will be ready for a dating website at the age of 50. Look, if I want to date, I'm gonna go where the ladies are. I'm gonna go where they at, and I'll find one that likes me, and I like her back. So the fact that they're going to dating sites is it's always going to be a red flag unless you're trying to get laid. And then she also tried to blame him having sex with her on him, which I'm sure there's a good chance that he was pushy, but there's also a good chance that she kind of wanted it a little bit. But it did seem weird to her. But I think that I don't know. Maybe she's over exaggerating how she felt hindsight, but in the spur of the moment, she probably would have did it anyway. Anyway, everyday people, that's part one. We'll be back with part two. Like, comment, subscribe, and mileage later. Peace.
Day and night. For some women, it can start working in as fast as 1 week.